What if the world's most formidable fortress, Avdiivka, was never as secure as everyone believed? For more than 8 years, the city's defenses, reinforced with thick concrete, honeycombed with tunnels, and manned by elite, battle-hardened soldiers, were considered impenetrable. Both sides, attackers and defenders alike, assumed that any assault would end in carnage for the aggressors. The myth of Avdiivka'S invincibility shaped every plan, every hope, and every fear on both sides of the conflict. Picture this: layers of barriers meters thick, bunkers twisting and turning beneath the earth, entire fields sown with deadly mines, all manned by some of the most committed fighters on the front. Avdiivka became more than a city. It became a symbol, not just of resistance, but of the very concept of fortress warfare itself. Its fall was not just unlikely, it was supposed to be impossible, a modern echo of the ancient walled cities that once decided the fate of empires. Yet, the impossible happened. In less than a week, what was thought to be an impenetrable citadel dissolved. The defenders were not destroyed by overwhelming force, but unpicked by methods that few predicted. Their lines did not break. They unraveled, swiftly and with terrifying precision. The world watched, stunned, as the myth of the unassailable fortress was shattered in real time, calling to mind the shocking collapse of the Maginot Line in France during World War II, when fixed fortifications failed to stop a mobile, technologically advanced enemy. How did Avdiivka fall so quickly? What did the attackers know, or do, that changed the rules? If even the strongest stronghold can collapse overnight, what does that mean for every other fortress, every city, every army in the world? The implications ripple out, challenging centuries of military doctrine and raising urgent questions for the future. This is more than a story about a single battle. It is a warning. In the age of advanced intelligence, new technology, and relentless adaptation, clinging to old doctrines is a recipe for disaster. For leaders and strategists, the lesson is clear: adapt or risk losing everything. Your walls are only as strong as your ability to rethink how you defend them. Let us unravel how Avdiivka'S legend was broken, and why understanding its fall could decide the fate of future wars. To do so, we must first examine what made Avdiivka'S defenses so legendary, and why so many believed they could never be breached. For nearly 10 years, Avdiivka was far more than a mere front line. It was a dagger pressed to the heart of Donetsk, a city of over 1 million people just a few kilometers away. The city transformed into a fortress of the new century, layered, multi-domain, engineered for war above and below ground. Massive slabs of reinforced concrete, meters thick, shielded its defenders. Beneath, a maze of tunnels and bunkers, industrial relics now expanded, linked strongpoints into a single, unbroken citadel. Above ground, dense minefields and deep anti-tank ditches stretched for kilometers. Every street block became a hardened firing point. Artillery, hidden and dispersed, waited for targets in absolute silence. At the peak, more than 10,000 of Ukraine's elite and most committed fighters garrisoned Avdiivka: special operations troops, seasoned nationalists, and those unwilling to yield an inch. Their mission was clear: hold the city at any cost. The psychological impact was enormous. For years, the mere mention of Avdiivka stoked both hope and dread. From these positions, Avdiivka'S guns hammered Donetsk, keeping a city of over 1 million people perpetually under threat. Russian forces and resources were pinned down, forced to dedicate extraordinary attention to this single stronghold. Even the concrete carried psychological weight. Every attempted assault had become a lesson in bloodshed for the attackers. The myth of Avdiivka'S invulnerability became self-reinforcing. For the defenders, Avdiivka felt untouchable. Any direct attack seemed suicidal. Years of failed assaults had made the fortress a symbol of Ukrainian defiance, a bastion meant to outlast any siege, the modern-day citadel. This echoes earlier historical examples, such as the fortress city of Verdun in World War I, where the French withstood months of relentless attack, or the fortress of Masada in ancient Judea, where defenders held out against a numerically superior Roman force for years. But there was an unspoken question. If a fortress like Avdiivka could be broken, what would that mean for the future of warfare? If even the strongest, most costly positions could be reduced, perhaps the very idea of fortress defense was obsolete. Just as the castle walls of medieval Europe were rendered irrelevant by the advent of gunpowder and cannons, so too might concrete and rebar now be outpaced by new tools of war. Yet it would not be brute force that decided Avdiivka'S fate. Something entirely new was about to be unleashed on the battlefield. The fall of Avdiivka would not come through traditional storming or attrition. Instead, a new, intelligence-driven approach was about to redefine the contest. The battle for Avdiivka did not begin with thunder or spectacle. Instead, it opened with a silent, predatory watchfulness, a quiet war of observation. Surveillance was relentless. Data, not shrapnel, became the first salvo. This was a war of electrons, of signals, of invisible beams and silent watchers. Russian forces saturated the skies above Avdiivka with swarms of unmanned aerial vehicles and electronic eavesdroppers. These drones, including the Arlan-10 and Arlan-30 series, flew at altitudes of several thousand meters, out of reach of most man-portable air defense systems. Every movement, a dawn ammunition run, a dusk troop rotation, a battered supply truck threading between craters, was instantly tracked and recorded. The defenders' every routine became an entry in an expanding digital ledger. Thermal drones saw through darkness and deception alike. Hidden bunkers, camouflaged dugouts, even the subtle veins of the underground defense network, all were exposed. No crevice remained untouched by the unblinking eyes above. Signals intelligence, meanwhile, went deeper than mere overheard words. It mapped command relationships, charted morale, and revealed the living architecture of Avdiivka'S resistance. All this intelligence flowed into a central analytic hub. There, a team of specialists built a living, breathing, three-dimensional model of the city. Every enemy position, command post, machine gun nest, ammo cache, was plotted, prioritized, and added to a kill list. No asset was overlooked. No secret stayed hidden for long. This systematic mapping is reminiscent of the British cracking the Enigma codes in World War II, turning chaos into actionable knowledge, or the Israeli Defense Forces' use of real-time intelligence to locate and neutralize threats in urban environments during recent decades. The famous fog of war was burned away. What the defenders once trusted as protective mystery became fatal transparency. The labyrinth they built to confuse attackers was reimagined as a chessboard, each piece visible, every trap mapped and catalogued in real time. In this environment, every advantage accrued to the side with superior data handling, just as in the Gulf War, where coalition forces' information edge proved decisive. With this advantage, Russian commanders replaced brute force with surgical precision. Strikes were choreographed. Command centers, communication relays, artillery positions, and resupply nodes were each targeted in turn. Every blow was calculated to paralyze a limb of the defense, while sparing effort and minimizing collateral damage. This method recalls the German blitzkrieg tactics of World War II, where the targeting of communication and logistics nodes led to rapid collapses far behind the front lines. The effect was methodical and ruthless. Familiar strongpoints collapsed in sudden, silent cascades. Cut off from each other, defenders found themselves unable to coordinate, resupply, or even call for help. Many did not realize they had already been rendered blind. In the age of information, to fight unseen is to gamble everything. Miss the intelligence war, and no thickness of concrete or depth of tunnel can save you. But the battle for Avdiivka was far from over. Mastery of information was only the first move. Exploitation of every exposed weakness, both on the shattered surface and in the darkness below, would soon follow. With the city's secrets fully exposed, the next phase would drive the attack from the digital map into the blood-soaked reality of Avdiivka'S streets and tunnels. The operation was about to shift from surveillance to relentless assault. Victories here were not forged by endless waves of men, but by audacity, stealth, and the relentless pursuit of tactical surprise. Gone were the expected frontal assaults and wasteful casualties. The northern high ground, the infamous Terracon, fell quietly in the night. Special teams slipped through the maze of trenches and minefields, silent as shadows, encircling the defenders before alarm could even spread. This tactic echoes the infiltration strategies used by German stormtroopers in World War I, who bypassed strongpoints to attack command and supply nodes deep behind enemy lines. To the south, brute force was abandoned for cunning. For hours, engineers burrowed beneath the earth, carving a secret tunnel toward the enemy's rear. The breakthrough came not as a thunderous charge, but as a sudden, coordinated eruption deep inside the defenders' own lines, a place they thought unassailable. The use of underground approaches recalls the mining operations at the Battle of Messines in World War I, where British engineers detonated huge mines beneath German lines, causing devastation and panic. Russian command did not waste energy battering every wall. Instead, they severed Avdiivka'S lifelines one by one. Supply routes were methodically cut, strangling ammunition and reinforcement flows. The classic encirclement, the so-called kettle, was sealed with more than tanks and infantry. A lattice of anti-tank weapons and swarms of first-person view drones barred every approach, creating a digital noose. This echoes Soviet encirclement tactics at Stalingrad, where cutting off supplies spelled doom for the besieged. Inside the city, the fight devolved into a ruthless, block-by-block contest. Urban sectors were mapped with precision and isolated. Each assault was preceded by live drone feeds and pinpoint air and artillery strikes that shattered resistance before ground troops advanced. This relentless suppression reduced the risk of ambushes and sniper fire, allowing units to press forward with minimal exposure. The approach mirrors the thunder run tactics used by U.S. forces in Baghdad, where precision and speed overwhelmed resistance. Technology gave the attackers a decisive edge. Reconnaissance and strike drones, specialized armored vehicles, and real-time communications slashed friendly casualties. Forces could coordinate fire and movement with a clarity that past generations could only imagine, adapting instantly to shifting threats on the ground. The classic example can be seen in the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, where drone warfare decimated static defenses. As command structures faltered, defender cohesion crumbled. Isolated pockets fought on, but cut off and demoralized, most surrendered or were systematically eliminated. The psychological collapse outpaced the physical. Avdiivka'S labyrinthine defenses became a deadly trap for those left inside. This is a lesson echoed by the fall of Singapore in World War II, where a seemingly impregnable fortress fell due to psychological shock and rapid maneuver. After the final resistance broke, Russian troops seized more than prisoners. They captured vast NATO stockpiles, detailed defensive maps, and sensitive documents, an intelligence windfall with consequences reaching far beyond the city's ruins. Such windfalls have shaped wars before. Think of the capture of Enigma machines in World War II, or the seizure of enemy plans at Tannenberg in World War I. The lesson was ruthless in its clarity. In modern war, failure to innovate or defend critical arteries spells doom for even the strongest fortress. Concrete and wire can no longer guarantee safety. They are undone by stealth, precision, and the relentless dominance of information. The static defense, once the ultimate insurance policy, is now a liability if not coupled with adaptability and intelligence. But beneath the surface of this victory, deeper questions simmered about the cost, the future, and the nature of war itself. What comes next may challenge even the victors. Avdiivka delivers a brutal truth. In an era ruled by drones and real-time data, concrete is no longer a sanctuary. For generations, the fortress was sacred in military thinking. Thick walls, deep bunkers, and endless tangles of barbed wire promised security. The belief was simple: enough cement would hold back any assault. Avdiivka shattered this faith. Static defense, no matter how formidable, is fatally vulnerable to an opponent wielding information dominance, precision weapons, and flexible tactics. Defenders clung to their reinforced hideouts, but the new reality was merciless. Unblinking eyes in the sky mapped every movement. Drones hovered by day and night, tracking resupply runs, exposing command posts, and transforming every path into a potential death trap. The myth of safe corridors vanished. There was nowhere left to hide. This is similar to the fate of fixed positions during the Yom Kippur War, where Israeli fortifications were bypassed and isolated by fast-moving adversaries. Steel and concrete proved secondary to morale, leadership, and logistics. Once command was disrupted and supply lines severed, the defense crumbled, regardless of how many meters of reinforced concrete stood overhead. This was a battle of minds as much as materiel. Isolating leaders, severing communication, and suffocating hope mattered as much as any bomb or shell. The collapse of the French army in 1940, after the Germans outflanked their Maginot Line, is a sobering historical parallel. Technological adaptation tipped the scales. First-person view drones hunted for weaknesses. Electronic warfare jammed radios and blinded sensors. Real-time intelligence let attackers rewrite the playbook, striking faster and smarter. Numbers and fortifications no longer decided victory. Speed, adaptability, and vision did. The lesson echoes the U.S. military's revolution in military affairs doctrine from the late 20th century, emphasizing the decisive power of networked warfare. The attackers did not waste lives on futile frontal assaults. Instead, they cut the garrison off, paralyzed its command network, and then dismantled its defenses in methodical fashion. The process was surgical, minimizing casualties and maximizing pressure. It was a new model for siege warfare: brains over brute force, precision over attrition. The fall of Avdiivka adds to a growing list of 21st-century battles where technology and intelligence, rather than numbers and fortifications, are the key to victory. The lesson is stark. Future defense demands mobility, dispersion, and relentless adaptation. Static fortresses will only become tombs on a data-driven battlefield. Those who cling to old doctrines risk disaster, squandering resources, losing vital ground, and becoming irrelevant in tomorrow's conflicts. Even city planners and civilian leaders should take note. The nature of security, whether in war or in peace, now rests on flexibility and rapid response. For leaders and strategists, Avdiivka is a warning and a call to action. The rules of warfare are being rewritten before our eyes. To survive and prevail, military thinkers must embrace these new realities before the next battlefield demands it. Adaptation is not optional. It is the price of survival in a world where yesterday's certainties have become today's vulnerabilities. If Avdiivka proved anything, it is that the rules of war have changed beyond recognition. The age of impregnable fortresses, of concrete and steel believed to be unbreakable, is at an end. Now, information, adaptation, and precision determine not just the outcome of battles, but the fate of entire nations. Consider the fate of the mighty Siegfried Line in World War II, breached not by direct assault, but by maneuver and innovation, or the fall of the Berlin Wall, which symbolized not just the end of a physical barrier, but a transformation in political and military thinking. Careers, reputations, and state security hang in the balance. For those who cling to old doctrines and static defenses, the price is not just defeat, but irrelevance. The Avdiivka campaign made it clear: victory belongs to those who innovate, who wield intelligence, technology, and flexible thinking as force multipliers. Russian forces did not simply outnumber their opponent or batter down the gates. They mapped every trench, every bunker, every supply line with relentless, around-the-clock surveillance. Drones became silent predators, hunting for weaknesses and striking with surgical accuracy. The defenders discovered that their deepest shelters and thickest walls were useless once their positions were exposed and catalogued. The lesson is clear for all. In the age of transparency, secrecy, and mobility are your only shields. This was not merely a clash of firepower, but a contest of minds and methods. The battlefield has become a chessboard, where the decisive move is not always the loudest, but the smartest. Brute force alone no longer ensures survival. Only those who master information, adapt quickly, and strike precisely can hope to control the outcome. The wars of the future will be won by those who combine the cunning of Sun Tzu with the technology of tomorrow. So the essential question is, are you adapting to this new reality, or are you still trusting in walls that can no longer protect you? The lessons of Avdiivka are not just entries in a history book, they are a warning. Ignore them, and you risk everything: your doctrine, your influence, your nation's survival. Study them, and you may secure your future. The challenge is not just military, but societal. In a world where change is relentless, only those willing to rethink everything will thrive. The era of the fortress is over. Every day, the margin for error narrows. The world is watching, waiting to see who will learn, who will adapt, and who will set the standard for the conflicts of tomorrow. Let us close with a practical call to action for leaders, strategists, and citizens alike. Study the fall of Avdiivka, not as a distant curiosity, but as a living lesson. Invest in the technologies and mindsets that foster adaptability. Train forces not just in marksmanship and engineering, but in digital warfare, cyber defense, and psychological resilience. Build doctrines that assume every secret will one day be revealed, and every wall will one day be breached. Encourage experimentation and reward innovation, even if it means abandoning cherished traditions. Make your defense as dynamic as your offense. Foster a culture where information is treated as a weapon, and agility is as valued as courage. Only then can you hope to survive and thrive on the battlefields of the future, whatever form they may take. The world will remember Avdiivka not as a monument to defiance, but as a turning point. Whether that turning point leads to catastrophe or renewal is up to us. Adapt, innovate, and prepare, or be left behind in the ruins of yesterday's fortresses.